fuel injection cleaning, do I need it? Because, just the other day I was in the shop and they told me I do. Do I really need it?
Well, maybe not today or maybe not tomorrow, but at some point you're going to need to have the fuel injection system, or it might be referred to as the air induction, where the air is entering the engine into your car. Those systems get dirty. We're using fuel. No matter what, when you burn a fuel, you're going to have carbon buildup or soot. It's like your chimney at your house.
I heard somebody tell me it's a total waste of money.
That person probably needs to find something to read about and get a little smarter.
Well, there is a way it could be a waste of money. I mean, you may be getting a car wash and an oil change, and they come up and they say, hey, here's this dirty air filter, here's this fuel injector service we can give you. Now, you mentioned two things, fuel injection service, and then you also mentioned air induction service. Those are two different things.
Well, yeah, I mean,
they're related.
They're related. When you had fuel injection originally coming out, or not originally coming out, but over time in early 80s, late 70s, you would have fuel injectors that got dirty. And we always wanted to clean the fuel injectors because you need to have a nice spray pad or a nice finely atomized fuel to get what they call stoichiometric fuel ratio. Big word there, Dave.
Say that over 3 times fast.
I know. And so we wanted to clean the fuel injectors, but the fuel injection technology, they've designed the injectors to where they don't dirty up as bad as they used to. But you still have carbon problems with carbon building up on the intake valves. And now that we have gasoline direct, or what you call direct injection, where the fuel is being injected directly into the cylinder, there's even a more...
There's a bigger problem.
There's a bigger problem.
Well, let's go past. I mean, we had carburetors for years, and then we went to throttle body injection was really the first... No, don't point your finger at me.
I was pointing up. I was going
throttle body injection, and then we went to port fuel injection, which is they were spraying the fuel in just behind the valve. And then we went to direct injection, which is really starting to come on the scene here in the last handful of years. And that's where there's some new issues that come along with that.
Really some super duper problems. And we'll back all the way up to carburetors. Older guys that have been around for a while might remember people used to do a top engine cleaner. You'd pour something down the carburetor because you wanted to clean the piston. The valves didn't get dirty because you had all that fuel constantly washing. So you never had a dirty intake manifold, and you never really had dirty valves. The piston itself, or the combustion chamber, was dirty. Well, then when you went fuel injection, now the valve started getting dirty because you're spraying fuel right on top of the back of the valve. And it's hot, and it's a place for it to collect. And among EGR flow, EGR gases, crankcase ventilation, that's all helping create this carbon buildup issue. So then we use the fuel injector cleaner, and the fuel injection cleaning cleans the carbon and also cleans the injector a little bit. But now with direct fuel injection, there's no fuel there to wash the valve.
Well, that's a whole new problem, and we were looking at some pictures on the internet, just how dirty those valves get. Now, air is rushing into the cylinder very quickly, and if you think about it, when that valve is just all crusty and got all this grime and crud on it, it's like rolling a skateboard down a road that's asphalt versus rolling a skateboard across the gymnasium floor.
Yeah, the basketball floor in your skateboard is how your car came out new. And over time, it's going to get a little dirty, and we'll keep that... Now, we're talking about fuel, too. I'm jumping all over the place here because this is a subject that I'm really not passionate about, but I believe in. Your choice of fuel could have something to do with this. But like you said, it's like a skateboard on a gymnasium floor. Over time, we're going to get maybe some sand on that floor, and then it ends up where it's rocks. You're out cruising down the road, and someone is pitching gravel, and you're trying to roll the air across that, or your skateboard. It doesn't work very well.
Well, we can talk about repeat offenders in certain types of vehicles where carbon is a huge issue, and you get carbon in the intake for different reasons. The EGR, we're feeding exhaust gases back into the intake of the vehicle. That's going to create carbon buildup. The other thing is back into the intake of the vehicle is the crankcase ventilation. Pull off the oil cap and just take a big old smell, and you're going to smell what is being re-entered into the vehicle. So that creates a lot of issues. But I think of the Honda with a 3.5 liter, and these EGR passages is just totally clog up. I mean, that's something that will turn on a check engine light at some point when there's not enough EGR flow.
Well, it used to be it would make the car fail emissions. You'd have a NOx failure. But now it won't necessarily. You're not measuring the gases for the emissions. Is the check engine light on or off? So the threshold to throw that light on is a little bit higher than maybe what the tailpipe readings would be. But Hondas have a problem with it. Fords, BMWs back in the 80s had problems, and we would fix cars. Cars would come in and fail emissions, and we would do nothing but service the fuel injection system. And again, we're using the fuel injectors to deliver the cleaner to clean the valves. You clean that, and the car flies right to emissions.
So I'm a consumer. I take my car and I'm getting a service. Maybe it's a quick oil change, and they come out and they say I need a fuel injection service, and it's going to cost me $89. I don't want to ignore my car. I want to take care of it, but do I need it?
For $89, I think you're wasting your money. And I, I have to be careful. That's too cheap. Fuel injection cleaning is one of the, I call it the top 5. It's the 5 hot button items or easy things that a shop can do for quick maintenance and service and revenue. But I would say this: if the place you're at specializes in oil changes or specializes in car washes, that's not the place to get the fuel injection system cleaned. You need, put it this way, if it's a full service repair facility that can do just about anything on your car, that's where you need to have it done, because a little can of shaving cream that I call it that the kid at the car wash uses is not doing you any good. You need a long service that's takes over an hour to do, cleaning the fuel injectors, recirculating the fuel, and really works at getting the carbon off the valves. And then you need to follow it up with something in the tank typically, and then drive the daylights of that car for the next tank of gas.
Well, so then if I'm a consumer, do I need that at 30,000 miles, 60,000 miles? Because I don't think it's in the factory manual per se.
You'll never see clean your fuel injectors in any factory manual or owner's manual, but it just needs to be done. I mean, there's Volkswagens and Audis and BMWs and Mercedes that have problems at 20,000 miles, and they're fixing them under warranty, and they just robs the horsepower out of the car. But then there's other cars, they don't have problems till 60 or 70,000. So it depends on the car. It depends on what you're going to do with the car. And Dave, this always goes back to having a relationship with your shop that understands how you intend to use your car, how you use your car, how long you're going to keep it. All of that plays a mix into how you might spend your money.
They're not just selling you something because the manager said, hey, sell fuel injection service on every car that comes through the door.
Yeah, you get $2 for every empty one of these cans you turn in today. No. It depends on how you want to take care of your car. And if you're a performance-minded individual, maybe you have an M3 or some hot Audi. You're going to notice that. You want to stay ahead of the game here.
Right. And performance enthusiasts would see the difference. I mean, we've seen cars get cleaned and then go on the dyno before and after, and there's a 15, 20 horsepower difference just with that. Fuel injection cleaning, gas prices are up. Do I need one? And I think that's where the relationship with the shop comes from, is that I don't have someone selling me something just because the manager said it's a good idea. But maybe you do have one of those repeat offender cars like the Honda with the 3.5 liter and EGR valves clogging up or...
Yeah, but I want to be clear on something. Fuel prices are up. I'm going to get better gas mileage if I go get my fuel injectors clean. No. That's not what we're saying. Don't get confused here.
It'll help, but it's not necessarily going to make up the cost that you spend on the fuel injection cleaning.
No. The whole idea with the fuel injection cleaning and the air induction cleaning is to prevent problems. Like I said before, sometimes we've fixed problems. Talk about hot rod Lincolns. The Ford engine, the Crown Victoria, the same thing that was in the Mustang and the Ford trucks, that's one of your repeat offenders. We can fix those cars oftentimes by servicing the fuel injection system. But the notion that you're going to go pick up 3 miles to the gallon today because you get this fuel injection cleaning with your next oil change, not going to happen.
It's going to help a touch, but
don't
not
be confused.
Right.
Yes,
So.
yes. I want to be clear about that.
Well, and I did a little bit of calling around yesterday, and I found fuel injection cleaning anywhere from, I saw the quickie shops for $89. Kind of got a description of what that was. Then I saw a range of anywhere from $150 to $200 for the fuel side of things, not necessarily cleaning the induction system or the plenum. So that's a whole separate issue. That could be another $150 over there on that side.
Or it could be something as simple as just cleaning out the throttle body using some cleaner. And the throttle body is where the air enters the engine. When you step on the gas, you either connect it electronically to a butterfly or a flap or with a cable. That's where all the air passes over the engine. That gets dirtied up and carboned up. We call it coked up with soot, junk. I mean, climb your roof and stick your finger in your fireplace or your tailpipe. That's what gets in the throttle body. So it could be a $50, take it out, clean it off, wipe it, swab it with a rag and some cleaner, clean the mass airflow sensor, reset the standard minimum air rates and be good. Or it could be something where we really need to put in some top engine cleaner and work this thing.
Well, if you're in a shop and they tell you need one and you don't have the money to do it today, it is certainly not a source of anxiety. It is not something you go, I got to get in and get a fuel injection cleaning. It's not. It's just a maintenance type of thing. It's a good idea. Some cars more than others, and that's where the relationship's going to come in. So up for this segment, we've got Richard in Phoenix on a 2005 Malibu. Go ahead, Richard. You are on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Yeah, I've got a question about my spark plugs. I got 54,000 miles on the car, and I was wondering if it'd be a good idea to change the spark plugs and the wires, because they say it's a 100,000-mile tune-up, but I don't know how you guys feel about that. And I want to know if it would seize, the plugs would seize inside the heads being in so long.
Right. Well, that can happen. On the Malibu is not one of the ones that has the spark plugs that break off or get seized in the heads typically. A lot of the Fords have that problem, the overhead Ford 5.4 Triton engine. But and it was a couple reasons. One, you had the spark plug sticking down into the cylinder a little bit, and the carbon would get on the threads. Talking about carbon buildup today. So you get carbon buildup on the threads, and that carbon is oftentimes harder than the aluminum head, and you back the spark plug out, and it takes the threads with it. Your Malibu doesn't have that problem necessarily. It can happen on any car, though. So, but to the answer to the question, should you wait till 100,000? You've only got 55. I think 55 is too early. 100 is probably okay, but we would see like Suburbans and such with your towing. We're seeing those misfire at 80 to 80,000 miles. So
in my mind, I was thinking 80,000 miles. I think 100 is a little too long, but 50 is pretty young yet.
Yeah.
So,
and if you're going to dump the car, if you're going to sell it at 100,000,
don't worry about it.
Don't waste your money.
But if you're going to keep it 120, 150,000 miles, absolutely.
But here's a perfect example of another problem that we didn't even think about, Dave, related to carbon buildup, and that's removing spark plugs on some models. You can prevent some of this by using additives like Techron or Seafoam. I like Lubramolly. They have a fuel injection cleaner. That will help prevent some of this carbon buildup and help avoid having some of these problems. So,
well, thanks so much for the call, Richard. Let's go with Tom in Mesa on a 2004 Ford F350. Go ahead, Tom. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Thank you for taking my call. This truck has got the 6-liter diesel, and it idles good, got lots of power, but it coughs going down the freeway. It'll, stumble, and I think it could be an injector problem, and I'm wondering what I should do.
Well, you need to get it to somebody to drive the.
It's very intermittent, so you can drive it for 2 days, even a week, and you'll never see it, and then you'll get in it, head down the freeway, and it'll happen for 10 or 15 minutes continuously. I've noticed if you rev the engine up in neutral, it tends to alleviate the problem.
Now, if you get it happening, like when we have a customer that's got a problem where it's not happening on a regular basis,
right.
Sometimes I say, go out and make it happen. And when it's happening, drive right into my shop. Don't turn the car off. Leave it running. I'm going to come right out, jump in your car, and go for a ride with you. Because it's so hard to prove anything if you can't make it happen. But then once it's happening continuously, I can have a gauge, and I could be looking at the scanner and see if something's going offline, like a TPS sensor or fuel pressure problem or something like that.
Well, and one thing to do to help the shop is maybe go identify a shop first that you might want to go to, or in the area that you drive in, and let them know that this is very intermittent, and pay attention to what's happening, and then make sure that you can run in and say, hey guys, it's doing it now. Can we go for a ride? And that's going to help you.
Well, let's go with a very patient Dick in Mesa on a 2004 Toyota Camry. Go ahead, Dick. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Hi, my daughter owns a 2004 Camry, 2.4, and it has 130,000 miles on it and has been absolutely trouble-free. But what happens is when she starts the car, now there's a puff of smoke that's emitted from the muffler, and when we add a fuel injector cleaner, it goes away. And once she goes through the fuel, and it has to add more fuel, but maybe not a fuel injector cleaner, it starts up again. And then correct it again by just adding a fuel injector cleaner.
Okay, well, there's a couple things that make those Camrys, that's not uncommon. There's a couple things that make the Camrys puff a little bit of smoke on startup. One of them can be dirty fuel injection system, and what would be happening in that case is the fuel injectors are leaking down a little bit, because when you shut that car off, they've still got pressure behind the injector. Let's just call it 40 pounds for an easy number. If those injectors are leaking just a little bit, they've got some trash on the pintle, they're a little dirty, that fuel is going to drip out and just rest there on the back of the valve and cause a puff on the startup. Or, I don't like the way you're looking at me, Dave. That's a very controversial stance there.
No, you're doing okay.
But the other thing that can cause them, and it's not terribly uncommon on the Toyotas, is the valve stem seal. You have a little bit of oil not a little bit of oil in the engine. You've got a lot of oil in the engine, but a little bit of oil will run down the valve stem and leak past the seal. And that is on the intake valve, so that gets ingested in the engine when you first fire it up. Poof, you get that little bit of black smoke when you start the car.
But I think your first one in this explanation is what we're looking at, because the fuel injector additive they put in the gas tank goes away.
Yeah, but that doesn't make sense.
No.
Though. There's something funny about that. And I'll say that if you go to the Acme Auto Parts on the corner, 95% of those fuel injector cleaners that they have on the shelf are junk. If it's $5, it's garbage. Go donate your money. You'll get more for it. Step up and buy a better product, a good product, a professional product. Try that. That'll help. Chevron Techron is great. We've got some more info coming up a little bit about some fuels,
Oh, yeah,
too.
that is appropriate. Well, thanks so much for the call, Dick. Let's go with Phil in Phoenix on a 2002 Dodge Dakota. Go ahead, Phil. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for taking my call. Yeah, I got a AC question, getting off the track of the fuel injector. When you I turn the engine over and she starts up, and I turn the air conditioning on. I don't get it. The blower doesn't come on, but the compressor fires up. So I turn the switch off, cycle it, turn it back on, and then the blower proceeds. And this has been happening pretty regularly. So what I do in the morning when we go to start, I'll turn the key when the lights come on, turn to the blower to on position. If it doesn't come on, I'll turn the key off, turn the key back on. It blows, then I start, and I'm fine.
Now, when you say the switch, which switch are you talking about? The ignition switch or the blower switch?
No, the ignition switch.
Okay. I think that's
Does that sound like that's what it might be?
pretty simple, yeah. Next time that happens, don't try and don't necessarily shut it off and cycle it. Just
wiggle it.
Jiggle it a little bit, and you're probably going to find that the fan is going to cut in and out. And that's pretty simple. That's 99% sure based on your description. You've got a faulty ignition switch.
I'm just a transmission guy, but does a fat keychain still make your ignition switch go bad?
Yes. Yeah, so if you've got,
Custodian keys.
yeah, everything hanging from it and some bling and some this and that. And there's this big thing that you wouldn't dare sit on or even try to put in your pocket. That
Right.
can contribute to the ignition switch falling apart for sure. So, and if you're looking for a shop, Phil, to help you with that, bumpertobumperradio.com. There's a list of great shops there. That's not a problem for anybody on that list.
Thanks for the call, Phil. Let's go with Lewis on a 2002 PT Cruiser. Go ahead, Lewis. You are on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Yeah, today I went to go turn on my car, and the PT Cruiser has like this self-check code or something. Like, I don't know, you have to like turn the key a certain way, and a code popped up. It was P1684, and I went online and checked out what it was, and they're saying it was called like Driver 594, saying that it was like the battery had been disconnected in the last 50 key starts or something. But the car just clicks, like it makes a bad clicking noise, and it doesn't want to start.
Doesn't want to start. Well, it sounds like maybe you've just got a weak battery. That would be the best starting point. I'm not familiar with that exact code off the top of my head, but batteries can cause all kinds of weird problems. And since the car is dead and won't start, that's obviously the first place that we want to check. You could probably take that battery out, maybe run it by a Napa or another parts store and have them test the battery itself and start with a good battery. But you can we had a truck the other day, It was a Ford. It had all kinds of dash problems and intermittent problems.
Battery cables.
Well, we tested the battery and it tested fine. This is a friend of mine. I said, Jeff, we need to leave the car. There's something going on here. Then we didn't get to it for a day. Then we got it to act up. We actually duplicated the problem. And then we checked the battery again, and now the battery is bad. Put a battery in it, problem solved. So batteries cause all kinds of funky problems.
It's time for Fact or Fiction.
Well, the fact or fiction for the day is, will running top-tier fuel help keep my fuel system clean?
This is more fun, Dave, when we've got 3 or 4 people in here to do this. So what was the question again?
Before the show, he always goes, come on, Dave, give me the answer so I don't look bad.
Even give you the question.
Yeah, right.
Will running top-tier fuel help keep my injectors clean? That is fact. But let's not be confused with top-tier fuel in the top level of fuel, like the highest octane. Those are 2 different things.
Well, that's what people, they want to do higher octane, thinking that's going to help things stay clean as well as give you a better gas mileage. Not true whatsoever.
Not true. You need to run the fuel that your manufacturer calls for, and it's going to be in your owner's manual, 87, 89, 91. It used to be back in the day that the detergents only came in the better gas or the higher octane gas. But top-tier fuel or top-tier gasoline, we've put a link. There's actually a website, toptiergas.com, and that talks about all the different fuel stations or fuel suppliers that have top-tier fuel. And it's got detergents to help combat this problem. QT, Chevron.
Is Costco?
Shell. Costco now wasn't, but the one that I used at Paradise Valley Mall, they had the tanks dug up a couple months ago. I'm like, what are they doing? They now have a separate tank with this additive in it so that their fuel is now a top-tier fuel. They're injecting or mixing the additive while you're fueling the car. It absolutely does help.
So a couple things. Back to Dick's phone call with his daughter's 2004 Camry with the poof of smoke first thing in the morning. He could simply start or make sure he's buying a top-tier fuel, see if that makes a difference.
And there is something to be said about blowing it out. I mean,
It sounds like something happens after the wrong kind of food.
This old redneck boy one day would say, I just got to blow her out. Well,
my grandfather always told me, got to get that thing out on the freeway and blow it out when I was a kid. He would tell me that.
And it's true. I mean, these cars have hydraulic valves, variable valve timing. If you just never get out of the 2,000 RPM range and you're driving 3 or 6 miles a day, never get on the freeway, you need to go foot to the floor and waste some gas once in a while. I like to say, do it like you're leaving pit road. You want to be on the throttle when you're getting on the freeway. Be the first one. Just let it rip.
If you're not one of those kind of drivers, you can loan it to a teenager, or I can do it for you if you like.
Yeah. And then, but if your car, we hate to do it, but if your car, BMW, for example, calls for 91 octane fuel, my wife claims she can tell the difference. I don't know. She's pretty sensitive to that stuff. But if you think you're saving money by not going with a higher octane fuel, if your car requires it, it could actually be worse, make the car run worse, because the computer's going to pick that up, retard the timing, and you're never going to know it, but the car's going to be a slug.
Well, we have an awful patient Felix in Youngtown on a 1985 Lincoln. Go ahead, Felix. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Yeah, hi, guys. I'm glad I finally got through to you.
Thanks, Peter. Or Felix, I'm sorry.
Picked this car up from the second owner, old Wyoming Cowboy. You got 97,000 on it, pristine shape. Did a couple majors with it. New battery, put plugs in it, no carbon fouling. The plugs were clean. Then I noticed the brake cylinder fluid was dark, and the power steering fluid was dark. So I sucked the brake fluid out from the top and cleaned it all up and replaced it, and sucked out as much as I can out of the power steering and put fresh fluid in there. And the guy had a double new catalytic system put in it, going down to the single exhaust pipe. It passed emissions great, like a quarter of what it was supposed to be.
Okay, so what's your question, Felix?
Shocks and airbags.
Okay.
He put airbags in it on the shocks about 1,000 miles ago. And as I run it down the road, I'm getting a little play it's going up and down, a little bumpy and squishy. You know what I mean?
Okay. Well, there's shocks and airbags, and the airbags are your spring. That's what's holding the car up, and then the shocks are dampening
the spring.
The spring. So new airbags might make it. The levels could be set a little wrong on them. I'm not sure. That system isn't that sophisticated with too much ride height in it, I don't believe. But just a good set of shocks will keep that from bouncing too much. Now, if you've had all that replaced, shocks, airbags, everything, you need to get into a shop that has some experience with the front end and suspension and can actually determine what's going on there. But you said something else that caught my attention, Felix, unrelated to your question and your statement about you sucked out some brake fluid. That's not what you need to do. You got about half. You didn't get quite half the battle, although you got half the fluid out. You cleaned out the reservoir, but you need to continue on, and you need to get that system flushed. Entirely
from top to bottom, all pouring
out.
Out with a turkey baster, and the master cylinder reservoir is only a third of the pie.
Yeah, and the dirty stuff is still in there. But also looking at it and just being dirty alone is not necessarily enough to change it, although I would. But there's actually a test where we're checking for moisture and copper. So make sure you've got good shocks, and then finish that brake fluid flush all the way.
Thanks for the call, Felix. Let's go with Joe in Maricopa on a 2009 Chevrolet Impala. Go ahead, Joe. You are on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
All right. Thanks for taking my call. Just when the last few days had an AC problem. Blows cold, blows fine, but underneath the glove box, you got a clicking noise to where I guess that duct, when the duct closes, you turn the AC off. It starts clicking. Clicks for possibly a minute and then turns off. And it's been doing this repeatedly. But never when we're driving or if we turn it off or on. It's only when you turn the car off.
Okay. That sounds like a pretty classic blend door motor. And does that have digital controls?
It does. No, it doesn't have digital.
Okay. Well, one thing I will tell you to try, we've got bit on these once or twice before. Check and see if the cold is all the way on max. And if it is, try taking it just one click off of max and still in the blue, obviously, as cold as it would go without going to full max. And if it doesn't click, you've got a recirculator door problem or motor. That's pretty simple.
Good deal. Thanks for the call. Let's go with Mike in Chandler on a 96 Camry. Go ahead, Mike.
Yes. We have a 1996 Camry. It's a four-cylinder. It's been a great car, but maybe 6 months ago, the AC, it blows nice and cold, and it could go for, 20, 30 minutes blowing cold, and then it'll just start blowing ambient temperature air. And then half an hour later, just at random, it'll start blowing cold again. And it was that way at the end of last summer, and it's, of course, the same way this summer.
You say the end of the summer, and did this problem start when it started getting humid?
No, I wouldn't think so. And this year, it's been since we started to use the AC.
So all summer long.
All summer, and then the end of last summer is when it started, and we just haven't fixed it.
When it doesn't blow cold, does it feel humid and musty?
It does feel humid. No, I'm not sure if that's the AC or
just because it is humid and hot, right?
Yeah.
Well, what I'm thinking, my original thought is that you have an evaporator core that's freezing up. That AC might just be blowing too cold. The other thing, you want to make sure you don't have a restricted cabin air filter that's slowing down the airflow over the evaporator, and then you've got humidity. It's not draining well, not enough airflow to exchange the heat, and now you get an evaporator that turns into a block of ice. You would typically get a restriction in your airflow. It's going to wait till it unfreezes, and then it's going to start blowing cold again. So that's what I would be looking at, cabin air filter. Maybe go to fresh air. Make sure you are not on fresh, on recirculating. That way you're not constantly trying to wring the water out of the air. You're just working on what you're breathing inside.
Thanks for the call, Mike. We're going to slip one more in. Let's go with Ryan on a 99 or 98 Chevy Astro. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I've got a 98 Chevy Astro, and I'm running fine and everything's fine, but I got a heavy vibration. Anytime you come out of the freeway or anything like that, or anywhere you go. I've changed the harmonic balancer, and I'm pulling up a code of an 1870, which is a transmission code. And I'm wondering what I can do to resolve that. Can I buy a new valve body? I've serviced the transmission.
Yeah, the 1870 code is not related to the vibration. You can get hard shifts after that 1870 sets on the freeway. What that is a torque converter clutch slip. And when you're out on the freeway, the computer is going to recognize a slip, and it's going to artificially bring the pressure up in the transmission. So when you get off the freeway, it's going to shift hard. And it can definitely be fixed in the valve body if it hasn't gone too long. Because what there is there's a lockup valve just kind of monitors. They slip the clutch just a little bit, and that valve is really buzzing, so it wears out the valve in the valve body. So that's where the problem is.
But that's probably not the vibration.
Not the vibration, but I don't know if we're hearing him wrong, if he's talking about a hard shift after the freeway or vibration on the freeway.
Well, Ryan, if you're still there, we cut you off a little bit earlier and we brought you back. Hopefully you didn't hang up yet. But does your vibration happen when you're stepping on the brake or just driving?
Pretty much stepping on the brake.
Okay, that's the easy one. You've got brake rotors that are out.
Two problems, yeah.
The check engine light's unrelated, but if you're cruising along at 55 and you go to slow down to get off the freeway and it just starts shaking the steering wheel, you've probably got something extremely worn in the front end, or you've got warped brake rotors. If you feel it more in your butt and the seat of your pants, you could have drums that are out of round.
You can shoot me an email, and I'll get you more information on that valve body repair. Thanks for sharing your Saturday with us to start. Wow, man, I'm like tongue-twisted today. BumperToBumperRadio.com. A lot of great shops there. Thanks, Peter, for putting on the show. He is Matt Allen, and I am Dave Riccio. We're going to plan on seeing you next week. And remember, never to text and drive.